Hello and welcome to Abe's complete Star Trek commentary. This is going to be a combination of episodes 12 and 13, which will encompass the Menagerie parts 1 and 2. The reason why I am doing two parts in one episode here is for a couple of reasons. One, it just makes things a little bit easier and a little more streamlined, but also because the bulk of this episode actually focuses. These two episodes focuses on the original pilot episode of The Cage, which I've already done a commentary about. And if you want to hear my thoughts and feelings and opinions and commentary on that, feel free to go back to the initial my first episode on this podcast. I'm not going to go over the Cage episode bits again. I'll just be providing a commentary on the actual original series, on the, say, Kirk era, if you will, parts of this episode. One other brief note as well. The reason why I'm skipping the Corbomite maneuver as far as the Netflix order is concerned is because I've done that one earlier based on the order that I had these saved to my computer, which was apparently slightly the incorrect order, but so I'm doing this as per the order that's on Netflix from here on in, and from here on out, the episode, the labels, the file labels that seeing on for these podcasts should match up, between Netflix and these podcasts from here on in as well. So the summary for this episode, as per Netflix, is that Spock abducts the Enterprise injured former captain and sets a course for a forbidden planet. Facing a court-martial, Spock refuses to back down. So the previous captain to this would be Christopher Pike. We'll find out exactly how injured he is and what this forbidden planet is. And I will find out. So let's start watching the episode and as I said, see how things go from the actual Kirk era perspective. So we initially have Kirk, Spock, and McCoy beaming down to what we find out pretty quickly is Starbase 11, and the yeoman who greets them, is a little states that the Commodore, it's a new rank that's being mentioned here. Who's like the commander of the starbase is wondering why the Enterprise came here, and Kirk is stating, "Well, we're responding to a subspace message to divert here immediately." We then get to the Commodore's office, where the Commodore is saying, "We sent no such message," but it was a message from the former captain of the Enterprise, from Fleet Captain Christopher Pike. To which Jose, Commodore Jose is pretty adamant to say that's not possible. It's impossible for him to have sent it. Kirk is thinking, why is it impossible? I mean, it's a fleet captain. He should be able to, send a message. To which Jose is saying that, well, you really don't know. I'm surprised you don't know, considering how much people have been talking about what's happened to him. So let's find out what has happened to the former captain of the Enterprise. So we find out that Captain Pike was injured during a rescue mission of a cadet vessel, where he got hit with some pretty severe delta rays. And when we go into the room, we actually see him in a wheelchair of sorts, confined from the chest down. And unable to move and unable to really talk. He's just given a blinking light, to say yes and no, and that's the limit of his communication. 1 for yes, 2 for no. One thing which I'm finding interesting though is that the makeup that they've used for him for his face, to demonstrate some of the injury, is the same. They use that purple makeup so much for so many different things. I've seen it pop up now in about 3 or 4 different different Star Trek episodes, and so I'm thinking possible lack of imagination in terms of what radiation burns would look like. Anyway, so Pike is initially saying he doesn't want any visitors. He's using Jose, to communicate initially. Jose is asking, "Are you happy for these people to come visit you for a while?" To which Pike is saying no, and the Commodore is trying to usher them out of the room, and Spock gets permission from Pike to remain, for a few moments. Let's find out what Spock has to say. So in this conversation, Spock is outlining a plan of some sort that he has to Pike, that he's going to take him somewhere which is only 6 days away at maximum warp, and that wherever he's going, it's treachery and mutiny, which against his former captain, let alone his current captain, is rather a big move for Spock. I mean, he's not the kind of person who would commit those kinds of acts lightly. So whatever it is that that he's going to do, it's going to sacrifice his career, possibly sacrifice his life, because being, at the very least, we're talking him getting arrested and getting locked up for the remainder of his days for what he's about to do. And Pike is adamant. He's constantly saying no. In other words, don't do this. Whatever you're about to do, don't do it. So he's, as to what this is, he obviously doesn't want Spock to sacrifice his career and sacrifice his life for him, which I can understand, because a captain is used to sacrificing his life for others, not having others sacrifice their life for him. So we'll see what this rather heinous act is and how Spock intends to carry it out. So Kirk and Commodore Mendez are now in Mendez's office again, and they're arguing about this message, which appears to either have or have not been sent. I mean, Kirk is defending Spock because he's never known Spock to lie. He's never known Spock to be deceitful or anything, and he's he's like, Spock said so in his log, and Spock said to me that that a message was received by the Enterprise, and then I trust him. And Mendez is saying, well, we've looked at your records, the record tapes that you got in front of you and from your own ship. He also calls down to the computer center to ask if there's anything that they found, and put simply, there's nothing. There is no record of this transmission, which, given Spock's earlier statement, that whatever he's going to do involves some kind of treachery and deceit, that he could very well have lied, to come here, but there's no reason for it. I mean, Kirk says that if he wanted to see his former captain, I would have granted the leave. So there's no motive, no clear motive being displayed at the moment. Which, whatever Spock has intended, is definitely very much out of character for him. And I am, personally, I'm curious to see what could cause him to go against his two captains in this kind of way, because definitely out of character for what we know of Spock. He's always been loyal, always been also follows the rules. He doesn't break them, and this is very much out of character. So I'm curious as to what can make him go this far off the rails, if you will, for lack of a better way to phrase things. So down in the computer center, Spock is, after the technician that Mendez was talking to wanders off to try and check further for any kind of record of this supposed message that Spock received. Spock comes along and sneaks along, and I'm finding it surprised that the technician doesn't, that the other technician in the room doesn't notice him, because he's not really being too subtle about it, at least not in my opinion, but small thing on that. He manages to come up behind Spock, behind this technician, and knock him out with the nerve pinch, and starts working on some of the computer systems there. Back in in Mendez's office, Kirk and Spock are still trying to figure out what the hell is going on. Miss Piper, who's Commodore Mendez's yeoman, the one who met the landing party initially, comes in and says, we can find investigation has turned up nothing, turned up very little. And so as a as a result, I mean, we're forced to consider Spock's years of service, and maybe there's something between Spock and Pike, but Kirk is like, that makes no sense either. I mean, Vulcans are loyal to their commanders, past and present, and there's, again, no motive for him to divert us here. So because there's no real kind of explanation in terms of Spock's behavior or what's going on, there's still no real reason given for for what's happening at this stage. It's still a really big mystery. There's further communication or discussion there in relation to Pike's condition, and I feel for him. I really do, but. And to be honest with you, Pike is actually living out one of my worst nightmares. To be trapped in your own body and not being able to express a single thought. Not being able to say a single thing, but to only be able to say yes and no and move an electric chair. It's horrible. It's one of my own worst kind of nightmares in terms of growing old. I would hate to not be able to communicate my feelings, my thoughts, my desires. For anything so simple as what I want to have for dinner that night, let alone anything else. Or to tell my family that that I love them or anything. It'd be a nightmare. And for someone in Pike's position who is used to being in command of the situation to being reduced to a mass of flesh, essentially, has got to be hell, and I really do feel for him in that kind of respect. So maybe what Spock's doing may have something to do with that. Maybe he heard about what happened to Pike and covered it up so that Kirk wouldn't know the full details of what he was beaming down into for some reason. Maybe he's got a cure in mind, which, whatever the cure is, may be... I can't see why a cure for Spike's condition would be treachery, though. Yeah. So we'll keep watching and see more as this episode develops. So after it's rather conclusively proven that Pike couldn't have couldn't send that message himself or requested that message to be sent in any way, it becomes rather damning evidence for Spock, so he's diverted a Federation starship without orders, and assaulted a Starfleet officer, so already the charges are starting to build up. We find him back in the computer core room, whatever, computer center, altering one of the consoles there, and by the sound of what the computer's saying, he's trying to adjust it to make sure it sounds normal. He's trying to give the Enterprise false orders, which is where the mutiny and the treachery, no doubt, will come in. So we'll find... Yeah, I still don't quite get it. I mean, I will say I do, having watched this episode before, but I will also... but I am doing this podcast from the view of one who hasn't. So... Yeah, let's keep watching and see if we can't find out what the explanation is for Spock's very odd behaviour. So whatever these mysterious orders are, the Enterprise starts to receive a transmission, and we see that Spock is the one who's setting these fake orders to the ship. The first technician that Mendez was initially talking to catches him in the act and tries to stop him from doing whatever it is he's doing, but Spock eventually manages to knock him out with a nerve pinch as well after taking a few punches to the face. The orders are essentially, the location is being scramble fed into the helm, and the ship will handle the voyage, and there's no kind of human interaction kind of involved in this. So whatever this trip is going to be, it's going to be entirely entirely automated. And there are definitely questions being raised. I mean, there's a fake transmission from the captain involved in this as well, saying that Spock will answer all the questions. it's said that the ship will leave in an hour, which I'm puzzled at because that's too much time. A lot can happen in an hour, and these guys are no doubt going to wake up in less than that. So this I do counter the plot hole. And they would report that it was Spock who knocked them out, and the Starbase personnel would be looking for him and trying to find out where the hell he is, to try and in addition to the fake transmission that initially got them here, there are definite questions to be raised for him. So let's find out if that's what happens. So we get back to Mendez's office, where Kirk is there alone watching Christopher Pike on a monitor, just constantly blinking no, and he's puzzled as to why. No to what? McCoy comes in, and the two of them are having a conversation about how out of character this is for Spock. And that for any other member of the crew, I could see this. We're human, and given a good reason, we could kind of go off and do something crazy, but not Spock. Spock is a Vulcan, and he's his Vulcan half, which is in control, is the one that would be keeping him keeping him loyal, keeping him honest, and makes him incapable of telling a lie. But the truth, Kirk does hit on a very valid point: is that either one of two things happened. Either we did receive a transmission which has somehow mysteriously vanished, or someone lied about receiving it. And to suspect Spock of lying would be almost the greatest insult for a Vulcan, because they are seen to be emotionless. It would be an embarrassment to him, to let his human half take over, and even that much. And I do agree with you, but even the most logical person can find a reason to do the most illogical thing. And that gets displayed in many an episode on, throughout, the Star Trek series, and a theme that I'm sure I'll come across more and more with more of these podcasts that I do. So at the end of this conversation, McCoy is requested, back on board the ship. There's no details given as to why, just that for some reason he's needed aboard. So let's keep watching and find out what the reason is and see what happens next. So after McCoy beams up to the ship, we get a kind of refreshed scene of a few minutes or sometime later in Mendez's office, where Kirk is looking at a file entitled Talos 4. And that is for the eyes of Starfleet Command only. Mendez is saying that it's okay, I've let you read it. He's got his yeoman looking at the monitor to keep an eye on Pike. Her mind, she wanders a little bit while, or her head wanders anyway, a little bit while Kirk is opening up this file, and gets told that the Enterprise was the only ship to visit that planet, with Captain Pike and Spock as the first officer. The other thing which I'm finding interesting is that this planet actually has a death penalty on it for if you were to visit it. Rather extreme, I find. I can certainly understand a court-martial, but death penalty, I don't know. Given what we know from the pilot episode and the mental capabilities of the Talosians, I can understand it to a point, I suppose, but because whoever they end up capturing, they'll never know what reality is ever again, essentially. But I still think it's a bit extreme to have the death penalty on a place just for going there and ringing the bell. So let's. But after that little tidbit of info, we find that Christopher Pike is gone, and that the Enterprise is leaving and refusing to acknowledge that the hail from the starbase. So let's kind of find out what's going on with the ship, because Kirk is definitely not going to like this. Someone's messing with his ship. I got to admit, I love the comparison between Kirk and his ship, and for those of you who have watched Supernatural, another show which I am very much enjoying, between Dean and his car, the Impala. You don't mess with either one and live. So let's kind of find out what happens next and how why the ship is refusing to respond to hails and so on. So we get on board the ship now, and Spock is taking command, and the crew's a little curious as to what's going on because there's no navigator, and Spock's saying, well, the ship knows where it's going. Communications are being sent to the ship, to which Spock orders radio silence, and then he communicates to the crew to saying that Kirk has been assigned medical rest leave. McCoy's come on board the bridge at this point, and that you're to follow my orders as you would Kirk's. Mine being Spock's orders as you would Kirk's, and he ends the shipwide broadcast at that point, and McCoy kind of goes at him. I'm Kirk's doctor. If there was medical rest leave ordered, I'd know about it. So what the hell are you going on about, Spock? Essentially, and in relation to being needed aboard the ship, I've checked everywhere. No one called me for anything, hangnail or what, or anything else. So, and Spock saying no one made such a call. And I think this is where we're about to find out at least part of Spock's big secret and what this plan of his truly is. And as I suspected, the big secret is that Captain Pike is being beamed aboard the ship. So wherever the Enterprise is going, the intention is to take Captain Pike there. Spock plays a message tape allegedly from the captain, although I don't believe it for a second given Spock's penchant for faking recordings at this point, saying that McCoy is not to ask Pike any questions, just to take good care of him. Whatever Spock is doing here, I just hope that he finds it worth it. So we're back to the bridge where Spock is returned alone, and it's found that there's a shuttlecraft following the ship. The helmsman initially goes to slow down so that the shuttlecraft can dock with them, but Spock says no, keep going, and we'll make no contact. We find out that the shuttlecraft is actually from the starbase, carrying both Commodore Mendez and Captain Kirk, but it's the Enterprise is not responding to hails, and Kirk is really not happy about this. They're essentially at the point of no return, where as far as fuel consumption is concerned, where if they're going to turn around, now's the time to do it. Otherwise, it's Enterprise or bust, almost literally. Spock is just run a quick check to see what point they're at from a fuel status standpoint, and finds the same information as well. And he's obviously not happy that he knows who's on board. There's no way he can't. There's no way that that he wouldn't know, and he's obviously not happy with the fact that the captain has put himself in this kind of risk to try and get back to his ship for whatever, which would obviously disrupt whatever this plan is that Spock has in motion. We do know that that part of this plan is to take it appears to be to take Captain Pike to Talos 4, although the reasons for it are definitely puzzling. At least I can understand kind of big picture, if you will, but why Spock is willing to take such a risk, to sacrifice his career and his life, given that this place has got the death penalty assigned to it, is a definite mystery to me. Don't get me wrong, I do appreciate loyalty, but to that extent, I do think it's taking things too far. But let's keep watching and see if there is kind of more to to the reasoning behind what Spock has done and is continuing to do. So we're back to the shuttle, and there is where all power has essentially died. They're out of fuel, 2 hours of oxygen left. There is an interesting point in the conversation that Kirk and Mendez have at this point, though, being that Starfleet doesn't know anything about the Talosian aliens, which I find extremely puzzling. Because, don't get me wrong, I understand the power of the Talosians and whatnot, based from the pilot episode. But to either not report that, back to Starfleet Command, or for Starfleet to cover that up and just say, for unknown reasons, do not go to this planet, I find weird and certainly out of character. I understand things being information being compartmentalized. Don't get me wrong on that point, but for the records to even have been completely erased, as it were, of why the death penalty exists and what the danger of this planet is, even among its own higher echelons, I find to be that I do consider to be a plot hole, because there should be some kind of record in terms of what actually went on there and what the reason why it's so dangerous, even if it's limited to, say, admirals and above. But it appears that not even that information was, for some reason, being kept very hush-hush. So, upon realizing that Kirk is going to do whatever it takes to get aboard the ship, Spock essentially tells the Enterprise computer to let him come aboard. He then tells the crew of the Enterprise that the helmsman, Mr. Hansen, is going to be in command, and orders McCoy to arrest him because he's committed mutiny, because he's never received orders to take command. This shocks everyone around, because as been mentioned so far, quite a number of times in this episode already, this is very much out of character for Spock. McCoy orders the security officers that have come to the bridge to confine Spock to quarters, and everyone's reeling from what's happened at this point. So we get another look at Scotty. I got to admit, Scott doesn't come in as many episodes as I thought he would, at least so far. Anyway, so Kirk and Mendez beam aboard, and Lieutenant Hansen hands over command back to Kirk and reports that Spock has been confined to quarters. Mendez is surprised by this, given the nature of the treachery that Spock has committed. The Enterprise starts moving on its own, and Kirk is trying to order the ship to stop after finding out that Spock that Spock has got the computers running the ship essentially. But the computer doesn't respond, and when Kirk tries to force it through vocal commands, the computer says that if I do that, it's going to short circuit the life support system. So Spock has actually got this very well thought out, that it's going to be Talos 4 or death. Or in Spock's case, given the nature of the death penalty for going to Talos 4, it's going to be Talos 4 and death, in his case. So yeah, this is definitely going to be very interesting to see how the heck Spock tries to get himself out of this one, but I don't see it. Obviously he does, but because there are more episodes with a minute, but I do wonder, what's going to happen, what's going to transpire here to A, save the ship, and B, save Spock. So there's an initial preliminary hearing so that they can try and sort out at a low level first, what Spock's done, but Spock is saying, nope, I'm going to go straight to court-martial, waive counsel, take me straight to court-martial. Kirk is initially saying that there needs to be a trial board of 3 command officers, and there's only 2 available, which would be Kirk and Mendez, but Spock points out that Pike is on board and he would be able to serve on this trial board as well. Kirk is like, he's a complete invalid, are you crazy? How can he give any kind of opinion? But as he's still on the active duty list, Kirk has no choice but to skip ahead from the hearing to the court martial. So let's see what happens here. So the court martial begins, and the very first question that gets asked is why are you doing this? What point does it serve to go to Talos 4 and to take Captain Pike there? And Spock, making this part of the official record, orders the screen to be turned on, and we see the first initial episodes of the Cage episode. Again, I'm going to leave my comments on that off of this podcast because I've already made them before. But getting back to the court-martial, Kirk is initially asking, was that asking Captain Pike, was that really you that we were seeing on the screen? And Pike responds with a one beep, yes. And Kirk is wondering, how the heck is that possible? No ship makes record tapes that clear, that accurate. And there's a little disagreement between Kirk and Mendez as to whether or not they should view more, because the court's not obliged to view evidence without knowing its source. But Spock correctly counters that unless a prisoner is asked why, which he was, and so he's now obliged to give the evidence. Kirk wants to see more and see what's going on, and what these records are that they're about to view, because whatever it is, it's something which, by the sound, Starfleet in and of itself has never seen. So after the court-martial board watches more of the recording up until the point where they've set a course for the Talos Star group, that Mendez starts to make some comments that Spock is making all this up. He congratulates Spock on his technical acumen and imagination, but Spock manages to get Pike to say that it was this is what happened 13 years ago, and Mendez is really not happy about what's going on, wants to essentially stop these whole proceedings and just get to the end of this court-martial and vote. But Kirk and Pike both want to hear more, want to continue to see these recordings from so long ago, which I can understand, which I do understand, because to only hear part of a story and part of a true story at that, without viewing the whole thing would not be justice. That would be, vengeance or a miscarriage of justice in some form. To not look at all the evidence surrounding the circumstances of what's going on. So let's continue to see how how the court martial proceeds. I will be skipping ahead quite a bit for this next for the next little while. As far as the episode's concerned, as I said, I'm skipping the the cage parts because having already commented on them earlier. So the next set of recordings stops just after the Pike gets taken, and there's a communication sent from Starfleet Command to Commodore Mendez saying that there have been transmissions that are being sent from Talos 4 to the Enterprise, and Spock confirms that the recordings that they're watching are actually being sent from Talos 4, not from the ship's record tapes. And that as per general orders, Kirk is now being relieved of command of the Enterprise, and Mendez is being placed in command, and Commodore Mendez is now being given orders to take command and essentially do whatever it takes to disable the ship or whatever, to stop the Enterprise from making it to Talos 4. And Mendez is correctly states that not only have you finished your own career by what you've done, and possibly your life if the ship makes it to Talos, but also finish the Captain Kirk's career as well. So yeah, it's definitely not good on all sides. And this is essentially and Spock's trying to defend the captain, saying he had no knowledge of what was going on, but ultimately it doesn't matter. He was in command. It's his ship. Mutiny or not, he should have known better and been able to handle the situation and prevented his ship from being able to make it or receiving the transmissions that that he has been. But ultimately, there's no choice because the ship is locked on course and there's no way to stop what. And Spock's not going to stop what's happening, and that is essentially where part 1 ends. So we get into part 2 of the Menagerie, and we just get the recap of the previous episode and get told that the images are still going to continue to be sent, and that while Starfleet has ordered no exceptions as far as the contact with no contact with Talos 4, that these images are still going to be sent, and Spock confirms with Christopher Pike that he understands, that he knows that the Keeper has taken over control of the screen and will continue to send in the images, to which Pike, with his single blink, acknowledges that he understands. And then we get into the next kind of recap of the Cage episode. Again, skipping ahead to after that to where the images stop, because we see that Captain Pike is tired and he's fallen asleep, and they want to make sure that Pike can also view the images along with the rest of the trial board. So the trial continues. There's not much. Mendez is still wanting to know why Pike is being taken back, but Spock is saying that the reason would be too unbelievable, and you just need to continue to watch the recap of what happened 13 years ago. And the bulk of this part 2 episode is a recap. Is now a recap of the original pilot, The Cage. So from here on in until we get to the end of the episode, and we get the kind of final kind of explanation. That's these will be my kind of final comments until we actually get to that point. So it continues on until just before Pike escapes from his cage, and the images just stop. For some unknown reason, and it's missing off the the tail end of the story, and Mendez is now just wanting them. He's had enough. He's wanting to kind of vote for either Spock's guilt or innocence, and Spock is saying, no, we need to wait, there's more to the story, you just need to keep watching the screen, but the images never continue, they never resume. And we don't know why yet, still, or at least the last tail end of the story still hasn't quite been told. But both Pike and Mendez vote for Spock's guilt. Kirk still hasn't said anything at this point. And so, but we still need to see if the tail end of the story is going to be told to give a clear explanation as to why Pike is being taken to this planet. Because they don't quite understand. I mean, they want him back as a plaything, as a amusement thing in a cage, or is there more to the story? And I can certainly understand those questions because they haven't clearly been answered yet. So at the end of the episode, we find that the whole court-martial was a hoax, a fake, that Mendez was never really there, and the Keeper communicates to Kirk that according to Spock, because of Kirk's strength as well, the distraction of a court-martial would be sufficient for them to reach Talos 4 without Kirk regaining his control of his vessel too soon. And it turns out that the reason for it was so that Pike could live on Talos 4 for the remainder of his life, unfettered by his physical body, so that he wouldn't actually be trapped in his mind anymore, the way that he has been since the initial accident occurred. And also, it appears that those images were being sent to Starbase 11 to Commodore Mendez, where he always has been, and that General Order 7 prohibiting contact with Talos 4 is being suspended due to Pike's illustrious service, and that he deserves to kind of retire, to this place in peace. Pike agrees to beam down, and we get shown the final scenes of both episodes, where Pike is allowed to live with Vina in peace in the underground caverns of Talos 4. So it's good I do like this as a kind of recap episode. It does tie off the Cage episode nicely as to where the alternate Captain Pike came from at the end of the Cage episode, and gave some more kind of character development to Spock, and the relationship and the way that he can let his human side kind of creep in, even though it he does try to suppress it. But yeah, this has been. I did enjoy this. These couple of episodes. I've always loved the trial type episodes in movies as well. Be it Menagerie or whatever. I've loved the Jag TV series. I love A Few Good Men and other kind of movies and shows. Kind of like it, and being able to bring that kind of element into the Star Trek world has also been quite enjoyable. So it's been fun going through this episode with you, or these two episodes with you. If you do have any questions or comments, or you do want to leave me some feedback, as always, you can contact me by email, warrior346@yahoo.com, or on my Twitter feed at warrior346. And I'm always welcome to feedback being left on the Apple Store as well. Thank you very much. Live long and prosper, and Kapla!